Hey, Boxscore Geeks fans. Here's another episode of the Boxscore Geek Show, including our special guests, Oscar Robertson and Phil Jackson, sort of. My name is Patrick Minton. I'm otherwise known as NBA Geek on Twitter. And I'm joined today by our lovely producer, Brian Foster. Say hi to everyone, Brian.
What's up, Patrick? Happy Super Tuesday, and welcome back to the show. We got some
Woohoo!
good
Super
stuff to talk about
Tuesday.
tonight.
Go.
Yeah,
Whoever
yeah.
your candidate of choice is, unless it's Donald Trump, in which case, fuck you. Okay. We're going to talk about some cool stuff today. We're going to talk a little bit about get the fuck off my lawn. We're going to talk a little bit about positionless basketball. We're going to talk about whatever the hell we want to talk after that. I'm not really sure what else we're going to say after that. But first, we're going to go on a little bit of a rant, and not the old man type of rant, but maybe more of a young person's type of rant. So, a couple of Hall of Famers made the news last week. The big O, Oscar Robertson, went on a bit of a rant about several things. But the two biggest things he mentioned was A, that none of the coaches in the NBA today know what the hell they're doing. I think that was his point number one. And Stephen Curry isn't really all that good, was his point number two. And I think he said something along the lines of, did he say something like Steph Curry wouldn't have been all that good if he'd played back when Oscar played?
Yeah, I'm bringing her up right now. I actually haven't listened to the Robertson stuff, but yeah, there's just kind of been a log line of people being a little jealous.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Like Oscar Robertson, if you talk to anybody in who works in the media who's ever had the opportunity to meet Oscar Robertson, he has had his entire life the reputation of being a grouchy curmudgeon who just doesn't like anything about the NBA, and just pretty much since the day he retired, probably when he was still playing, he was saying, "Oh man, these guys suck. Back when I was a kid, I was so much better than these guys. These guys are all terrible." And you know what? It turns out when he was playing, he was probably right. Like if you if you go back and look at at clips from the time when Oscar Robertson was playing, like Bob Cousy basically couldn't dribble with his left hand. Most of the centers in the NBA couldn't shoot at all. Like unless they were actually literally pseudo dunking the ball by putting it above the rim. They couldn't make a shot outside of 1 or 2 feet. Most of the wing play, I mean, the league's field goal percentage, the league-wide average field goal percentage, and you have to remember, this is before they were shooting threes, so there was no reason that, there's no reason that players should be shooting with any regularity, like from 23 feet back in those days. The league's field goal percentage was like 38% or something like that when Oscar Robertson played. In fact, I remember once Oscar Robertson said one of the reasons he averaged a triple double is because there were so many more rebounds to get because they played so much faster and the shooters were so much worse. So, so for some reason, all of that is forgotten because he doesn't think players in the NBA know how to play the game, and he doesn't think the coaches who coach in the NBA now know what they're doing. My favorite response to this was from Steve Kerr, who, as we all know, played 20 years ago and was pretty damn good at basketball because he's got 5 rings and played on 2 of the greatest teams of all time. He was like, okay, sure, but if you put Steph Curry on a team in 1996, I wouldn't be able to guard him. How the fuck would I guard him? If you put Steph Curry on a team in like 2003, who's guarding him? So it's kind of a ridiculous statement, to say the least. I really don't know how much there is to say about this other than, I feel like, well, I have 2 things to say about this actually, but first I want to sort of hear what you have to say because you're the resident Golden State fanboy on this podcast.
Damn right.
So let's hear your take on this. Would Steph Curry have dominated the NBA in 1987?
Yeah, so someone told me that this is kind of a similar Bay Area sports moment to when Barry Bonds was in his, steroid field heyday, and he just, it's like he's gonna hit a home run, and he still does it. It's just almost unbelievable how good he is. And of course, we're taping this just a few days after the Oklahoma City overtime game, where Curry hit all these 30+ foot shots and one to win the game even, and it's just incredible. I think there's a stat that he's made more 28+ foot shots than anyone else has taken, and
Yeah, no, he's something like 14 for 29 or something like that from beyond 30 feet, which is
yeah.
just it's absolutely, to borrow a word that Dre uses a lot, it's absurd, right? We'll talk more about that for a second in a second too. But anyway, to continue what you were saying.
Yeah, we'll segue into the Curry threes, but I mean, just we look at the numbers and they are just out of control. The eye test is the same way. He just hits it with guys draped all over him. There's actually an article we might look at on the show today too about players who are taking a lot of isolation shots and how efficient they are. He's good from isolation too. It's not just a product of the offense. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean this is historical stuff, and people are either jealous or out of touch, or I don't know.
I mean, I
It
think
doesn't
one
make
of the
any sense to me.
reasons Curry can get so free to shoot it, well, so free to get as relatively free as he gets, considering that teams are trying so hard to defend against it. One of the reasons is because he really is dangerous out to like 35 feet.
Yeah,
Like you can't just stand there and watch him jack a shot at 35 feet because it's not like if you're letting Randy Foye shoot from 35 feet. He's really dangerous at 35 feet. And so you have to
he
guard him
practices them,
way
right?
out,
He practices those
you know.
shots all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. And that in itself is a revolutionary thing that I'll get to in a second. But
Yeah,
but the point I'm making though is that a normal point guard who's a good 3-point shooter has like maybe, you know, 3 or 4 feet beyond the line of room to play with, to make a move, to shake a defender. That's not a lot of room because the defender can relax a little bit as soon as your foot gets past that 3-point line, because the real danger when you're guarding a guy on the perimeter who's a good 3-point shooter, your big danger is that 3-point shot. And if he gets all the way to the rim, you're going to live with the shots he makes at 21 feet, right? So in general, as a defender, you want to push them off that line. You want to force them to drive and get off that line. And then once they've driven, you want to recover enough so that they can't score a layup. Those are basically your two jobs in the modern NBA defense. And plus, when you're doing pick and rolls, you have defensive schemes like ice where you have a lot of help that's close to the rim. But with Steph Curry, it's not that easy, because when you're out at 35 feet and he dribbles by you, he gets a quick first step. He's still got like 6, 7 feet of area where it's still a 3-point shot, and you have to recover and you have to get there and you have to defend all that room. You cannot let up until he gets well inside the 3-point line. Where then again, he's super dangerous because of his ability to pass. He's got so much room to play with that it's literally a cheat code. It's just unfair for
yeah.
the defender, because you can't ask a defender, everyone grows up when they're learning to defend, to defend both the shot and the drive. And you can't ask a defender to do that all the way out to 40 feet. That no defender on earth can possibly do that against a guy who's got a good handle and can release as quick as he can.
And
So
it's
it's
got to
kind
be
of
tough to rewire an entire lifetime of defensive training, right? That pick them up at the 3-point line. I mean,
That's actually, yeah, that's another thing too, because Coach Nick tweeted something about how the one way he agrees with Oscar Robertson is that he thinks that defenders aren't correctly defending Steph Curry.
mm,
And I think I forget who it was. It was a former NBA point guard who mentioned this. It's like defenses have got to start picking him up at the half court line. You can't wait
yeah.
for him to get anywhere close to because he's shown now, he's done it like 30 times throughout this league where he dribbles in, and if he notices you're not up close on him when he gets to about 35, that range from like 35 to 30 feet, if you're not getting close enough to him, he will stop and pop, and he will hit that shot like 40% of the time.
So sorry to
Better,
interrupt, but
right?
one of the funny things is there's a compilation. I don't know if it's Reddit or somewhere. I can't remember who made it. Apologies for that. But it's a compilation of all those 28-foot shots that he's made in a row. And what struck me the most about it is the announcers a lot of the time are complaining that the players aren't guarding him closely enough. And I'm like, it's 35 feet. And it's the defender's
it's really
fault.
hard to it's really hard to recondition yourself that, oh yeah, and because usually for most defenders when they start picking up people at half court, it's because the coach wants to play some kind of a trap or some kind of pressure game, right? With Steph Curry, it's not about that. It's about, no, you just got to defend him. You just got to play one-on-one defense right away. You can't wait. You cannot get back into the behind the 3-point line and guard. You got to pick him up right away, and not because you're trying to pressure him to get rid of the ball, but just because he's dangerous right away. And I mean, I don't know, like I don't know how often you play pickup games, but every once in a while in a pickup game, you'll run into that guy too, who like
Oh
the first
yeah.
time he comes down and he stops it like because in a normal pickup gin, the line, the 3-point line is at what, like 21 feet, is it? Whatever that
Yeah,
college
I think
3-point line
yes,
is,
the
pretty
college
short, right?
line. Yep.
So the first time you played with some guy who stops 6 feet behind that line and he shoots, you're like, oh shit. And then when he drains that, you're like, oh fuck, I gotta guard that guy way out here. And then it's so easy to forget this. Like it just like you're constant you're doing it and you're on top of it, but then it's so easy to get into a rhythm and then just go where you always go. And oh wait, shit, I gotta guard that guy way out there. And obviously, I'm not comparing myself or any rec player to an NBA player, but the same concept applies. You're talking about players who have done something a certain way for their whole basketball career, and now you're telling them, no, no, all those rules do not apply when you're guarding this guy. You got to do something totally different. And it's really hard to stay on top of that and not ever slip up and not ever forget because you forget one possession and boom, 3 points. It's like shit, right? It's so hard to do. It's so hard to just completely recondition yourself. And this is where maybe you'll see some effects in a playoff series. When your team is playing Steph Curry, 7 games in a row. Probably by game three,
Mm.
Steph Curry's man has figured this out and will not leave him alone, if at all possible, anywhere within the half court, right? But when you're playing night in and night out in the NBA, you get into certain habits. It's really hard to just turn those habits off for one game and say, nope, Steph Curry is a special exception. You got to play differently. So I'm gonna be interested to see like when the Spurs meet them, because this is something that Pop's teams are absolutely famous for, adjusting game two, game three, game four. The Spurs start just doing something special just for that opponent and playing differently. And I will be very interested to see how it works when presumably those two meet in the Western Conference
They're also
Finals.
meeting, I want to say, three more times in the regular season, so
Yeah,
they're going
but
to be playing the Spurs a lot.
if past history is any indication, Pop is not going to show his hand. He's not going
He'll
to make any
sandbag,
giant
yeah.
adjustments in the regular season.
He also
He
benched
generally
Leonard
waits
for the
until the
last
playoff
game.
series to start making adjustments, because he wouldn't want to show his cards, right?
Yep.
That's just my inclination of. I think, I do think the Spurs will play tough, close games against the Warriors, but I don't think he's going to make any like radical systemic adjustments to his defense in those series. That'd just be my guess, though. I mean,
Yeah, although they do, they're in danger of getting passed by the Oklahoma City, who's also having an amazing season. Like those three teams are
yeah,
having pretty good seasons. But so anyway, I've
yeah.
got
I
this.
guess it's no really a foregone conclusion that the
Yeah,
Spurs, because I mean, it really kind of looks like the Warriors get to be on one branch of the tree, and then they get to see between the because I think they'd end up playing the winner of the second and the third seed the way it works out, right?
yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Because I think if they win, then the team they play against is the 4 versus 5, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So you get to basically wait and see, the Spurs and the Warriors, like, then one of them gets to knock the other out. So they only have to beat, one other sort of contending team to get to the finals. So in a way, you might even say that the Warriors' relative path to the finals is a little bit easier than the Cavs, because we've been saying all year like the Cavs only have to beat whoever else is in the East, but the Raptors are coming on pretty strong right now, and I don't know that the Cavs' path is quite as easy as we thought it was. And it looks like the Spurs' path, sorry, I keep saying that, the Warriors' path is pretty good because they've got such a lead over both the Spurs and the Thunder that they're really not in any danger of slipping into the second seed. So, they won't have to face like both the second and the third seed, whereas whoever's second or third will have to face the two others to get to the finals.
Yeah,
That
and Portland's playing pretty well too. So there's a lot of good teams for everyone to navigate through in the West. But yeah, just finishing up on Curry's threes. I've got a screenshot up here from ESPN. He broke something like 4 NBA records in that game against Oklahoma City on 3-point shooting. So pretty amazing. Everyone's
I,
seen it, so we won't read through them. But yeah,
I
amazing
think the thing
performance.
that people keep when people keep talking about coaching, I think that people keep sort of neglecting is that Steph Curry's been taking a lot of shots that in any previous year, the traditional wisdom would have said that's a bad shot, right? You don't let a player jack a 32-foot shot like in the first 5 seconds of the shot clock. That's a crazy bad shot. But here's the thing: not only is Kerr and or Walton, by extension, that entire staff allowing that shot, they're actually encouraging that shot because he practices that shot. They're telling him or they're working with him to say, yeah, you're so good at that. Why don't we practice that? Why don't we actually work that into the game plan? Why don't we actually make that a legitimate threat in the offense? Which is something that no other coach would have even bothered trying. It's a sort of thinking outside the box that no one's giving that coaching staff credit for. I think they started it a little bit last year, but like it's amazing that last year after having won the championship, they made this extra leap. They're like, okay, how can we get even better? And this is one of the ways they could get even better by saying, Steph Curry is really good. He's the MVP. Why don't we try to get even more shots in? How can we get Steph Curry more shots? Well, maybe just by extending the allowed shots out to like 30, 35 feet. And I think that's kind of a thing that gets completely neglected. It's a part of their game plan. It's an actual, he's not just playing NBA Live out there or NBA 2K. I mean, I think the coaching staff really does encourage that. And that's a thinking outside the box that no other team is bothered.
Yeah, and another comparison that he's been getting is Babe Ruth, right? He's just changing the way the game is played almost. And I've got an Ian Levy article from 538. Ian Levy writes on a lot of different sites. What an awesome
Yeah.
guy. Uh, and the name of the article is Steph Curry is on pace to hit 102 home runs. The idea being that's how far he's going to break the 3-point record. It's similar to
Well,
percentage wise, similar to that.
what it really should say though is Steph Curry's on pace to hit 102 home runs without ever batting in the eighth or ninth inning.
Yeah,
Because he
that's a good
sits
point.
out so many fourth quarters. It's like it's really insane. If you look at minutes played, he's at like what 1900 ish, and most of the other teams' superstars are at 22, 2300 minutes. I mean he's playing far fewer minutes than most of the other superstars, and yet destroying people's like records, destroying people's lives and hearts and souls. Um, an interesting thing, Coach Nick has talked about this a lot too. I'm shouting him out a lot too. I think he'll be my shout out at the end of the show. That you know when guys like Chuck or Oscar or whatever say Steph Curry's bad for the game, I don't. I mean, I just kind of roll my eyes. But one thing they are right about is he is going to change the game because if you look at it from a pure if you look at him from just a pure athletic perspective, he's not the greatest athlete, right? I mean, he's a very, very good athlete. I'm not trying to diminish his athleticism, but what I'm saying is that many athletes have the same gifts as him, but not very many of those athletes have trained the way he has. And I'm not talking about smartness or hard work or any of that stuff, but I'm saying like not many athletes have said, well, why don't I just practice my game out to 30 feet? Like why don't I pull the trigger anywhere I want to all the time? Why don't I work on my quick release? And if we start getting the next generations of athletes that are all imitating Steph Curry, trying to do the things he's doing, I think inevitably we will get many players that maybe they won't be as good, but they'll be in that realm. We're going to get many players capable of completely changing the game because they're deadly out to 25, 30 feet. Um, and you already kind of see it in at least in my mind. I'm seeing it with Damian Lillard right now. I think Damian Lillard's been kind of looking at Steph Curry and going, "Huh, I can do that." And he's starting to get a lot more trigger happy outside the arc. He's starting to shoot a lot more bombs, and I think he's going to expand that. And I think it's going to benefit his game, make him even harder to guard. And I think you're going to start seeing that with like the guys in that are like 13, 14 years old right now who are the best
Yeah,
athletes in their classes. They're going to start practicing that way. Again, I'm not talking about hard work. I'm just talking about like things that they never bothered, like it never occurred to them. Wow, I should practice out to 30 feet. That never occurs to most kids, right? And like they'll do it on a lark. They'll be shooting around and joking around, but none of them ever thinks, wow, maybe I should really like make it a routine and really make my range go out to 30 feet. We start seeing that happen, we're going to see like imagine a guy who could shoot like Steph Curry, but who was 6'7" and 220 pounds. That could be something we could be seeing in in 5 to 10 years. I think that's going to be the next generation of like super athletes. That are going to transform the game, and it's going to be really interesting. I mean, Coach Nick's even talking about things like, "Hey, we're going to have to like make the rim higher because once the guys with the crazy long arms that are 6'7" and super fast and like ridiculous athletes, imagine an athlete like LeBron James who had trained in that early in his career, like
Yeah, the closest
that.
thing we have is Kevin Durant, right? Or maybe Dirk
Yeah, but
Nowitzki.
even Kevin Durant, like his range goes out to maybe 25-ish feet,
Yeah.
but you don't see him go out to 30 very much. But he could. He totally could. If he made that a thing, he made it his routine to practice that as much as possible. He totally could. And if he started doing that, then it gets into this. I mean, then words like unguardable start to have a real literal meaning and not just hyperbole. Because, I mean, at least with Steph Curry, you have some chance of guarding him by putting a guy with some length on him to make it harder for him to get his shot off. Obviously, he does. It's not going to stop him from getting his heart, but you can make him work at getting his shot off. But if it was Kevin Durant, who are you going to put at Kevin Durant that could prevent him from shooting at 30 feet if he wanted to?
Yeah, and Curry's also a great passer in case they try to double team him. He's a great dribbler too, so yeah,
That's actually
it's
something.
pretty tough to
Yeah, you're
stop.
distracting me a lot. You're making me talk about things that. So I don't know if you remember, like 3, 4 weeks ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, there was this thing on Twitter: who's got the better handle, Irving or Curry, right? And there's
Mm.
this huge debate going on. And my thought on this has always been that if you look at pure skill with the ball, I think Irving has a better handle. Like what the things that Irving can do with the ball and how he can change directions, etc. Irving's better. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter, and people who play a lot of basketball understand this, is that it's not just about that pure skill. It's with Curry, his release, his incredibly quick release makes his handle look so much better
Mm.
because the fact that he can stop and release really quickly anytime means that defenders have to be at least a half step closer to him than they have to be to Kyrie Irving, right? And when the defender's that much closer, it's so much easier to make that defender look like a fool by putting on a move, right? Not only that, but defenders have to be. It's so much easier for Steph Curry to make a defender bite on a hesitation move because they know that he can jack one up and shoot it and drain it really fast. So they're dancing on eggshells out there trying to guard him. Whereas with Kyrie Irving, yeah, sure, he's a good shooter, but he's got nowhere near that quick release off the hop that Curry has. He nowhere near that ability to gather, hop, and shoot off the dribble that Curry has. And so all of those things make Curry um, allow Curry to much more juking and breaking by defenders than Kyrie Irving can do. I think Irving gets by his man based on pure skill with the ball, like doing wizardry things with the ball. Whereas Curry gets by his man because his man just has to always, always, always be so worried about the pull up. So any kind of hesitation move, anytime where he like makes a little thing with his shoulder where he's about to gather the ball, like, I mean, it's really, really hard to defend that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think that's all I've got in the Warriors for now. They'll give them a shout at the end. You have anything more? Are you ready for positions?
I I guess I'm ready for
All
positions.
right.
Talk about Steph Curry all night, but
Yeah, yeah. It's such a great topic, boy. Yeah, so
so
there's a position change, position adjustment change right on the website and how positions are done, and there's a lot of reader questions and comments about that we can get into. But I don't know. How do you want to start this?
I think like so it all kind of starts with like so the whole positionless basketball thing has been a meme lately, and I think there are some real truth to that. Like I mean, you see you teams like the Warriors who have some chameleons on that team, like Green, who can play 3 or 4 positions You have players like LeBron James who can play three or four positions. You have players like Kevin Durant who play two or three positions. Um, you have a lot of point guards in the NBA that really play a lot like shooting guards. Like like Russell Westbrook is basically a shooting guard who can also pass the ball pretty well. You have a lot of power forwards, the stretch four things. You have a lot of power forwards who can shoot the ball outside, so they almost look like threes. So positionless basketball's become this thing. However, we don't completely buy into the entire positionless basketball thing. So so the counter argument obviously is no one's saying you want to stack a team full of Dennis Rodmans and they'd be the greatest team of all time. That would obviously never work. But what we're saying is you also probably couldn't stack a team full of Draymond Greens. That team would also probably not be very good. There are still positions you still need a guy who's so much better at everyone else in terms of handling the ball. Or if you don't have that one guy, you need a couple guys. Like for example, the Bulls in the '90s were almost a team without a point guard, at least that second dynasty. Ron Harper was officially the point guard. Jordan and Pippen both handled the ball a lot, but all three of those guys were very good ball handlers, so that worked. They were sharing responsibility. So what we're saying is we think there's been a lot of position bleed, but we don't think that the game is still positionless. And when we look at that bleed, the positions that make sense to us are point guard, primary ball handler, whatever you want to call him, wing, which is traditionally we call that the shooting guard and the small forward, and then big man, the man who's rebounding a lot and posting up a lot, etc. Because um, you can have traditional back to the basket guys like Al Jefferson um, or 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 I guess Hassan Whiteside would even fit that model. But you can also have guys like Kevin Love who do a lot of things that like a traditional center would do, like rebound the ball, but not a lot of things offensively that a traditional center would do. For example, he shoots a lot of threes. So we've divided them up into point guards, wings, and big men. And we've just kind of recalculated the averages for all of those things, and we've reallocated positions. We've dumped everyone in those three buckets, and that has changed a lot of the wins produced numbers. And now, first thing I want to say is this isn't perfect. There are still guys who straddle lines. You have guys like Dirk Nowitzki who are kind of wings, but they're also kind of bigs, right? And we're classifying them as bigs because, like, a lot of times he plays in lineups where he's the biggest or the second biggest guy on the court, and regardless of whether you want him to be a small forward or not, somebody has to be under the basket grabbing rebounds. So he's a big, right? The system's not perfect. There are still guys who are really hard to fit into one or the other. There are guys whose position kind of get misallocated because we have a height algorithm to figure out how to distribute minutes. And sometimes you have guys like Draymond Green who muck things up because he's kind of small. So you have to make sure if he might not get all of the power forward minutes, is what I'm saying, right? Um, it's not perfect, but it's better than it used to be. I think there's a lot. I think there's a much better distribution in terms of who's playing what position, because simply relying on what Basketball Reference or Yahoo or ESPN or whoever lists as the player's primary position just doesn't work because the number of players who literally just only play that position all the time is getting fewer and fewer in the NBA. So that's a big change we made.
Yeah, and
What
so
do
it's
you
a
think?
simple way to look at it that basically you have to compare players who are being asked to do similar things and that's why you can't just look at raw production.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, if you look at raw production, then DeAndre Jordan looks like amazing compared to Steph Curry, right? But then again, no one's asking Steph Curry to grab a bunch of rebounds, just like no one's asking DeAndre Jordan to bring the ball up the floor, which is why he doesn't have very many turnovers. So you have to compare players to their respective positions.
Because, well, yeah, another great example is point guards versus wings, right? If you compare the two, point guards are just way better because they always have the ball in their hand and they have a much higher kind of ceiling on what they can produce based on that, right? So, yeah, and
Right.
and that's a good
They're the
point.
guy.
Being
I mean, they like literally. the way most teams play, they're given the ball at the beginning of each possession and have a lot of opportunities to make something good happen with the ball. Whereas a small forward or a shooting guard has to wait for somebody to pass them the ball to make something good happen, right?
And yeah, and conversely, rebounding and shot blocking is really important. It's worth a full possession, right? But unless the coach says, "Hey, stand next to the basket," you don't really get as much opportunity for those.
Right. I
So
mean, there's not very many opportunities for Kyrie Irving to block a shot. Like the only time he has that opportunity is when he's defending his own man and his own man is going to the basket and he is blocking that shot. Like it's very hard for him to ever be in a position where he's the primary help defender, and would even setting aside height and things like that, it would be very hard to put him in a position where he would even have the opportunity to block a shot.
yeah, although Aaron Gordon's getting some notoriety for blocking jump shots on the perimeter, but yeah, very and
But that'll
interestingly,
last. That won't last very
yeah.
long before the offense figures out, okay, maybe I shouldn't try that.
But so him and Draymond Green are two guys that did kind of go down a little bit now that they're getting compared to centers, right? But again,
Well,
it's not their
not
fault.
centers, but bigs, right?
That's right. That's
I mean,
right.
they're not just getting compared to Andre Jordan; they're also getting compared to Kevin Love or
Hmm.
um, any other random power forward whose name I can't remember because apparently I don't know any power forwards in the NBA.
They're all gone. See, this is going to make me hate small ball even more. That these, small power forwards just look really bad compared to real 7-footers.
Well, Green still looks really good.
That's true.
He doesn't look as MVP-ish, I
That's
guess.
right. So okay,
Whenever we throw on the word MVP, this is like one of those years where it's like, well, we mean MVP in any other year where somebody wasn't doing something as crazy as Steph Curry is doing.
yeah. So we had a few questions in the comments about this. A Williams 87. Well, we've all kind of addressed this. Is that we've never taken the time to seriously listen to the positionless stance. So yeah, A Williams 87.
That's not true. I mean,
Well, what? So first of all, I don't even know what he's talking about when he said that. Like, what is? I don't know what his evidence is to
I
say
don't.
it should
First
be
of all, I don't know
positionless.
which stance he's referring
Yeah.
to.
So A Williams, follow
So I
us
mean,
up on that.
like for what, like basically what I'm saying is that when you look at teams like the Warriors who practice what people commonly refer to as positionless basketball, right? They don't mean literally completely positionless, right?
Yeah.
They mean okay, they're putting in players who can overlap positions. Like I'm putting in a Draymond
Oh,
Green
interesting.
who can swap on the perimeter. I can switch him on the perimeter so that he can guard small forwards and even shooting guards in a pick and roll situation. But that doesn't mean Green isn't playing power forward, right? That doesn't mean his position is irrelevant. That doesn't mean that if I put five Draymond Greens on the floor, we'd be fine, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, Draymond Green is still playing power forward, right? He's still
Hmm.
like his primary defensive assignment is a power forward. If the other team wanted to, the other team could come down and dump the ball into the post and post up against Draymond Green, and Green would have to defend that guy. And the fact that they don't do that speaks to how well Draymond Green defends, but that's because he's a good defender for a power forward.
Yeah.
He just happens to also be a pretty good defender against small forwards and even shooting guards when he's switching. The fact that he happens to do that well doesn't mean we're positionless, right? He's still playing power forward, just like Klay Thompson is still playing a wing, right? And it's not positionless basketball. So what we mean when we say we're not buying into this whole positionless thing is that so since the dawn of time, coaches have dreamed of this scenario where they just get five LeBron Jameses and play that way. And I agree. If I could find five LeBron James, I would totally do that. Like every coach's dream is to have a team that's full of like 6'8" guys. And in fact, I would argue that during that Bulls dynasty, that second one, it was kind of like that, right? It was basically 4, 6, 7 guys, 6, 6, 6, 7 guys. And then since they didn't have a fifth one, there was always a random center like Luke Longley or whatever, right? But it was basically, Harper, Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman all look pretty damn similar in terms of height and length, etc., right? And they were all very interchangeable in terms of who they defended. Um, it was as close. It's probably even more positionless basketball than the Warriors are playing nowadays, right? If they could have found another guy that fit that profile to play center, they probably would have. Um, except maybe against teams where like Shaq was playing or whatever. But those players don't grow on trees, right? And And every time a player like that comes along, every time a LeBron James or even a Kevin Durant comes along, it throws a kink in your model because it's like, well, doesn't Kevin Durant's not really fitting this model because it's really hard to capture a 7 foot guy who's playing small forward in the model. But that's because those are like the extremes. Those are the outliers. Those are the Hall of Fame players. They make that. But there is no such thing as positionless basketball in a sense where you just had, or at least no one's come up with a team that good yet, where it was like, well, we'll just get 5 LeBron James and throw them on the court, and whoever happens to catch the ball first will bring it up as the point guard, and every possession will swap up who's guarding whom and who and how the plays run because it's all just completely interchangeable. That never happens. I mean, that I think even if you did have a team that had 5 guys of LeBron James caliber, you'd probably still want some kind of a meaningful assignments. You'd probably still want to have one guy say, okay, LeBron number one, I want you to play center because we really need a guy who's always paying attention to their center and looking to block shots and looking to help out. And LeBron number two, I want you to play point guard because we got to pick up Steph Curry at 30 feet. We can't just wait until, we can't just swap up who's guarding Steph Curry every time down the court. So even then, you wouldn't have positionless basketball. There would still be role assignments.
And that's a good segue into the next question, actually, which is from BPS, who says of the top 25 bigs, 20 are listed as centers, and of the top 25 wings, 15 are listed as small forwards. And he says, why is it that 80% of the best bigs are all centers? And so you can answer that too, but what I'm going to guess is that, yeah, just being big is really, really good.
Yeah.
And in fact, the Warriors, even when they went with their super small lineup against Oklahoma City, the reason why they're in the position to have Curry have to do all these heroics anyway is because they got out rebounded by 30. The Oklahoma City just kept their big men in and they just destroyed the Warriors on the board. So, I mean, I don't know if you think there's anything more to it than that, but yeah, being big is just great in basketball.
Yeah, being really tall turns out to be a really big advantage if you are a big. Um, so most of the centers will probably be better, but I mean there are exceptions, right? I mean, I think Anthony Davis, for example, is probably a classic example. When I look at the Timberwolves nowadays, they're playing Deng and Jang and Towns both at the same time, and it's never entirely clear to me
Hmm.
who's the center and who's the power forward, because especially since neither of them is a stretch. I guess a lot of the times Towns is the one that's going to shoot more outside shots. I mean, as much as Sam Mitchell will let him. So maybe he the stretch four or is he the stretch five? And then and does it differ? Because sometimes it looks like on offense, it looks like Jang is playing center and Towns is playing power forward. And on defense, it looks like Towns is playing center and Jang is playing power forward. But it all depends on the matchups. And it's hard to say, right? I mean, it's kind of but what I'll go back to is I think there's a lot of teams playing stretch fours that it turns out aren't very good when you play as power forwards. They're not very effective. I think a good example is Paul George. Paul George would be fantastic if he was a small forward, but he's not so great as a power forward because he just is not doing a lot of those things that you need a power forward, or in other words, you need a big man to do. So all of those kind of fours that a lot of the NBA teams are playing, where that four doesn't do any of those big man things that you need your big man to do, they're going to look bad. And I know small ball is the rage, but this doesn't change the rules of basketball. If you're not grabbing any defensive rebounds because you're a crappy rebounder, then you're probably a crappy big man. I don't care if you're like let's take Channing Frye, right? If you shoot 40 shooting 45% from three is great. Not grabbing any rebounds is not great, and they tend to sort of wash out and he becomes this sort of middling average player at best. But then you get a player like Kevin Love where it's like shooting threes is great, good. Oh, rebounding's also great, good. But then it's like blocking shots, not so good at that. So ding you there, and he becomes kind of a good but not amazing big man. Um, but then, I mean, if you look at a player like Anthony Davis, has all the tools to be, better than DeAndre Jordan as a big man, even if you're just ignoring position. So I don't know what to say to that, but I think what you put it the best is that it turns out really tall guys, the tallest guy tends to be the best rebounder, and that tends to be really important to winning. So
Yeah, even if it's not as difficult, it doesn't take as much skill as, the Kobe fadeaway jumper. It's just really effective. Being big is just so effective. So,
sure, I'd agree with you. It doesn't take as much skill, but that's um, from a value perspective, that's worthless because
That's right.
I can't teach the 6'7" guy to be 7'2" and grab more rebounds. I can't teach that, right? I mean, there's certain parts of rebounding you can teach, but at the end of the day, a 6'2" guy is not going to block 8 shots a game, and there's no way I can teach him to do that. So the fact that I could teach him to do some things that are more difficult than what a 7 foot tall guy would do, that's not helping me. I still need a guy
Yeah.
who's going to stand under the basket and block some shots.
So, A. Williams, maybe we answer your question, maybe not. You can follow up with this. So, I don't know. Do you want to end it there, or do you want to hit up Whiteside real fast?
7:35. Let's talk a little bit about Hassan
Okay.
Whiteside. So I guess the first thing I got to say about this is I want to know who is the authority, who do I talk to figure out when stats are empty and what's the opposite, full? I don't even know. Why are Hassan Whiteside stats empty? And people talk about how he's had 2 triple doubles with blocks, both of them off the bench. Um, and people talk about how what he does defensively kind of throws up the team defense concept. It's like, I'm sorry, but if he blocked 3 shots instead of 10, how the fuck could that defensive possession have ended any better than those 7 possessions where he blocked the shot? I don't understand that. Like, I get that he probably does some things that throws everyone else a little bit out of the defensive schemes, but does it matter? He's blocking 10 shots. Like, pretty much, zero field goal percentage when your shot gets blocked. Last I checked, holding the other guy to zero field goal percentage was really good. It's hard for me to buy that, like, for let's say he blocks 10 shots. It's hard for me to buy that on the other, like, 25 possessions that he's involved in, that team shoots so much better field goal percentage because Hassan Whiteside is so far out of position that he's costing his team possessions. It is so hard for me to buy that. My main thing there is if your defense isn't built around Hassan Whiteside blocking shots, then why the fuck are you playing Hassan Whiteside? Like, you're just doing it wrong. Your defense should be built around funneling people into Whiteside and letting him block shots.
Yeah, we've got
It's like,
this.
okay,
Oh,
we're
go
putting
ahead.
him in there, but we're ignoring the fact that he's a shot blocker, and defensively, we're trying to do completely different things and pretending he's not a shot blocker. It's like, okay, then your defense is wrong. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. That, like, there's no such thing as empty shots because when Ender Wiggins goes up to dunk a basketball, he's not like saying, "Oh well, but that's Whiteside. I'll let him block my shot." That's never happening. There's no such thing as empty stats. It's just, I mean, the stats are the stats, right? And he's blocking 3.9 shots a game despite coming off the bench and playing far fewer minutes than number 2 on that list. It's I mean, it's kind of crazy. I don't know. I don't even know what to say to people who think those are empty stuff. And I don't know what to say to the Heat's coaching staff that he's still coming off the bench. But I guess all I can say is what Dre was saying to us earlier, which is if you want to keep him, you can't pay him because you don't have the money in the salary cap position. You can't pay him. There's 0.0000000 chance that the other teams do not offer him a max contract, and you can't pay him a max contract. So your only chance to keep him is to convince him to take less money because we love you, Whiteside. We love you so much. And saying, okay, but we're only going to pay you 20-25 minutes a game doesn't scream I love you to me. Right? If I'm Hassan Whiteside, it's like I guess you guys kind of think I'm like a bad boy or something. You're kind of treating me like I'm 14 years old, like I gotta earn. Like, what does that even mean? He's gotta earn more playing time. What the fuck else does he have to do to earn more playing time?
Gotta have more
So
10 block games, I guess.
I mean, he doesn't get to start. He doesn't get to play lots of minutes, and I feel like his teammates and his coaching staff trash talk about him in terms of his attitude a lot too. None of that bodes well in terms of them re-signing him. The only speculation I can have, and I have no evidence whatsoever of this. This is just a random hot take. That Pat Riley is like, maybe if we only play him 20 minutes a game, keep his stats low, maybe no one will offer him a max contract. That's the only possible explanation that makes any sense that I can think of. Because if you want to win, you should be playing him 35 minutes a game.
Well, he's gonna get a max contract, that's for sure. All
Right.
this,
I mean, that's why it's futile. Like,
the salary cap's going
he
up,
could
right?
play 10 minutes a game, he'd
Yeah.
still get a max contract.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I guess that's it. We're over time a little, so should we go to shout outs?
Sure. My shout out is to Coach Nick. Um, as always, really great stuff. This week he's got a couple of cool videos on, on how Steph Curry overcame Kevin Durant in that game. He's got an even more interesting one, in my opinion, on like whether or not the Cavs are playing any differently under Tyronn Lue than they were under Coach Blatt. Um, and as always, putting out great stuff. I love his podcast. I like listening to him. I love his breakdown. I find it even like, and this may sound really stupid to everybody, but I find it even as just a random player in rec games, just trying like listening to his tips on shooting. Um, for example, I have been like the last year or so. I grew up very old school. I was like one of those 1-2 shooters. Every time I caught the ball, it was like left foot, right foot, plod, plod, shoot. And I'm trying really hard to like sort of retrain myself in my old age to hop and shoot instead. And it makes a huge difference. It's especially like from a footwork perspective. If I don't know if you've ever paid attention to this as a player, but from a footwork perspective, when you're coming off a screen and you're coming off a curl or something like that, when you're turning over your left shoulder towards your right, if you do like a 1-2 stop, it becomes much harder to get like kind of get your legs under you and get power on your shot. Whereas if you come to a hop, it's way easier to do that dip and get power on your shot. And then the reverse is kind of true when you're coming off a curl the other way and you're turning over your right shoulder. This is as a right-hander, obviously, turning over your right shoulder, coming up, it's easier to get power on your shot. But it's also easier when you're doing that turn and shoot to forget to put your left foot down, and then you end up like only getting power from one of your feet and not getting as much power as you want on that shot. And when you just train yourself to always catch on the hop, all of those problems just go away. And if you start practicing it, it becomes kind of like it's very cool to like actually see yourself putting that into practice in a rec game or something like that. Even if you don't have to be an NBA player to like learn how to play better basketball and enjoy yourself more. So definitely catch out Coach K's stuff, both his inside NBA stuff and also his coaching videos. It was really good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, Coach Nick, bballbreakdown.com. Check out his site. Okay, so my shout out is to the Golden State Warriors, of course, but it's for their Twitter responses to all these haters recently. And I'll just read the Fox Sports headline that for all these tweets. It is Stephen Curry wants to travel back in time and humble a 14-year-old named Fat Jimmy. So we'll link all these tweets. It's pretty funny stuff from the Warriors. So anyway, yeah, that's all I got. Do you want to do the closeout, Patrick?
Yeah, so you can find our show every week on twitch.tv/nerdnumbers. You can find us at boxscoregeeks.com. You can find us on iTunes by searching for Boxscore Geeks Show. You can find us on Stitcher by searching
Sounds
for
right.
Boxscore Geeks. Have I forgotten anything?
Might be on Libsyn these days. I don't know. Dre takes care of that stuff, but
I don't even know what Libsyn is.
get all the links on boxscoregeeks.com.
Get all the leaks on boxscoregeeks.com. Check out our stats on boxscoregeeks.com. Check out Dre's box scores of the week. Check out Brian's articles. I haven't written much in a very long time. I need to get back to writing. That's all I really got to say. We'll see you guys next week.
Shout out to Dre also for
Yeah, I'm sorry,
a
Dre.
mysterious reason. A mysterious reason that he doesn't like to discuss. Good job, Dre. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.